describe my role is team, rewarding and challenging.
Positive, team, supportive.
3 words I'd use to describe this job: gratifying, inspirational, challenging. Before this, I was a hairdresser, but I wanted to do more than make people feel good. I wanted to help change their lives. I'm now part of a team that does exactly that every day.
I spend my days talking to the residents of Nottinghamshire, their families and the support services that help them on a day-to-day basis. We're the front door to adult social care in Nottinghamshire, and we're responsible for taking the time to build a picture through talking with our residents about how they lead their lives, the things that they find difficult, the things that they can do, and also looking at how they wish to fulfil their lives to the best of their possibilities. In the 5 years of working here, I've learnt so much, particularly about social care. I had no previous experience in it, but through a really good training and induction plan, I was given all of the skills and information that I needed to be able to do my job. I've also been able to grow personally and within my career since then through a personally tailored plan of support and training to keep me going.
We're a really close-knit team and we thrive off helping the community of Nottinghamshire to live a valued and independent lifestyle. Every day is different and there's always new things to learn, which makes the role interesting and really exciting. At the end of the day, knowing that I've helped a number of people to have a better quality of life makes every day worthwhile.
my job, and I've been a mental health nurse for it's more than 40 years, so I'm not going to give my age away. September last year, I was walking my dog and she happened to pick a fight with another dog. During that fight, I intervened and I was bitten by either of the dogs, I don't know which. As a consequence of that, I contracted sepsis with quite a virulent bacteria. Essentially went into shock, lots of organ failure, and the result of all that is what they call a quad amputation. All of my life I've been very independent. I never felt as if I'd lose it. I always just thought, and I still do, it's something you're constantly working towards. My wife's the gardener, not me. I used to do the heavy jobs. Yeah, the carer thing is quite important. I think the big thing for Anne has always been, if I know the help's there and how to access it, then that makes me feel better already. When I was considered to be medically fit, before I was actually discharged, this rather nice man called Nadeem turned up, and he explained that he was the hospital social worker. He explained the concepts of social care. As soon as we started the assessment, it was obvious that we were also going in a direction.
What makes me proud about working within the hospital setting is having the opportunity to work with hospital OTs, physiotherapists, doctors, working with the individual to meet that individual's need collectively. Crucially, the individual is the heart of the work that we do.
The right services were put in place in a very caring way. Nadeem was the hub. Essentially, it did feel like a joined-up approach.
I think Julian naturally is a confident man, and I think it was about trying to ensure that we harness that positivity that Julian has. The strategy offers us opportunity to work with individuals around their needs and promote their confidence and independence, and allows them structure and control to think about the services that they want and how they want to live independently within the community.
All the services that I need have been provided and I feel well cared for. The difference that adult social care has made is the difference between being in an institution and being miserable and being at home and being happy.
My life was a bit of a struggle. I've always wanted to do things, like be out and about, meeting new people. Basically, my head was all over the place.
I started working with Shane in May 2017. His social worker in the transitions team referred him to the Knots Enabling Service. I know that Knots Enabling Service have changed Shane's pathway for the better. His social worker told me that he was planning to commission 2 days of day services for Shane. And now what we have is someone who's happy with their life, working hard, getting paid, and for those other 5 days a week not being bored, sat at home.
Ever since me and Aidan have been talking, ever since I've called him my brother, he's shown me some good skills, he's a nice lad. I can't have no one better than him, because he's quality.
I quickly found out that Shane was very good with people and his social skills were great. He always makes me laugh. He wanted to do some gardening and also he wanted to help people, which is why he did some volunteering at the community gardens. I increased a person's confidence by focusing on what strengths they do have, because I believe if you focus on things that interest someone, you're likely to get the best out of them.
I have the confidence to actually do something now in my life.
I'm proud that I've enabled someone to be able to do those things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do before or believe that they could do. And I think that sums up what the Knots Enabling Service is about. We've changed someone's life for the better and actually made him more independent.
My passion is basically birds of prey. The best of all are my peregrines. everything you've got is all based on a bond. If you haven't got that bond, you haven't got anything worth having. When I got told that I'd got dementia, I was told that it would gradually get worse, so it meant I had to get rid of my car. I got rid of quite a few of my Falcons and what have you. Hardly anybody ever rings me up about Falcons at all, see. You can't expect it to go on forever, but anyway, it's finished with now. Mary and myself do everything that we can. We help one another. So we've said at times we'll have to have some help.
As an occupational therapist, I try to promote a person's independence. I always start off with a person-centred approach because we just want the best for the person. So I think that's quite a good thing as a therapist to work in a team that do actually promote that. When George initially came home from hospital, he did state that outdoor mobility was one of his goals.
I'd been in the house for a long time and I was quite pleased to be able to get out and have a walk. I says, I haven't been out for weeks.
From the very young age, when I was a child, I used to idealize my father. He was very fit and athletic, and he was a police officer, so he used to do exercise every day. I used to think, oh, one day I'm going to be like him. So keeping myself healthy and fit, that meant a lot for me. I contacted Nottinghamshire County Council Adult Access Service because it was recommended by my friend.
People normally get in contact by phoning the customer service centre. Information's gathered, then it's passed through to the Adult Access Service, who will then call back, have a conversation and establish the best way to assess somebody. Seema was invited to our clinic. She was very nervous, didn't know anything about equipment, and unfortunately she'd lost confidence trying to access her bathing facility. She stopped taking care of herself because she was scared.
Jane made me feel so valued because she was listening to me, and she was very good in picking where I was struggling, and she just focused on that.
I love my job. Helping people do their everyday living tasks, getting into your bathing facility. We take it for granted every day that, it's easy to do, and seeing someone with a big smile on their face once they've tried a simple piece of equipment that is going to give them that independence to get back is such a big achievement for both that person and for myself.
Without Jane, I would not have known that I can help myself. It changed my whole view of care and how I can make myself independent.
Originally, she was maybe thinking of carers, but with the simple provision of the shower board, it has promoted her independence, made the person happy and their life bearable again.
All my life, I've liked to be with people. I used to work for British Home Stores. I used to be head cashier and, in charge of office there. I think that still rubs off on me here because I have to talk to everybody and interfere. My husband died when we were both 52, he had a heart attack. So I'd always looked after myself. And then I got to a time when
Thank you. We're now live. I'll pass over to the clerk. Thank you, Noel.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for your patience this morning. I'm just going to explain who's in the meeting this morning. So we have, as well as the chair, the committee members present in the meeting today are Vice Chairs John Handley and Phil Rostons, Pauline Allen, Richard Butler, Jim Creamer, Glyn Guilfoyle, Kevin Greaves, Tom Hollis, Bruce Lawton and John Ogle. Councillors Gordon Wheeler and Maureen Dobson are regular attendees of the committee and are here, and we will also be joined today by Councillors Martin, Payne and Plant. We have the following officers present: Corporate Director Adrian Smith, Service Director Matt Neal, and Derek Higdon will be joining us shortly. Group Managers Sally Gill, Gary Wood and Mark Walker. Team Managers Heather Stokes and Sue Jakes. Via East Midlands is represented by Mike Barnett and Doug Coots. Other officers may be called upon to provide information during a meeting, and they'll be introduced at the appropriate time. The meeting is being held in line with the requirements of the Coronavirus Act 2020. Please do bear with us if we experience any more technical issues. If we do lose any members from the call, then officers will seek to get them reconnected as soon as possible, hopefully without the need to halt proceedings. Officers will inform the meeting if they're unable to rectify the problem, and we may need to pause or adjourn to sort things out. I would ask that members refer to agenda page pack numbers during discussions, and that they keep their microphones on mute when not addressing the committee, as this minimises sound distortion on the Teams meeting. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Noel. We'll move to item 1 on the agenda then. It's the minutes of the last meeting. There's no formal vote, but can I ask the committee if the minutes can be agreed, please?
Move it.
Thank you very much. We'll move it. Move to item 2. Any apologies for absence, please, Noel?
Yes, we've apologies from Councillor Vaughan Hopewell, who is unwell, and the substitute member today is Councillor Richard Butler. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is declarations of interest by members and officers, disclosable pecuniary interests and private interests. Are there any interests to declare? Are you wishing to speak, Councillor Butler?
No.
Okay. It's all right, I can't see anybody. All I've got is a screen with initials on. Okay, we'll move on then. So item 4 is the flood risk management update, and I'd ask Gary Wood and Sue Jakes to present the presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me, and thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to bring this update presentation to you today. When I started this job 4 years ago, I used to imagine these futuristic houses for those who were at greatest risk. When within a couple of years, they've actually become a reality, and we have a version of these now along the River Trent. So flood risk management, how did we spring to life? The team originally formed in 2008. The focus then was more on drainage and high related issues, to be fair, but the possibility of working more effectively with partners began to evolve around 2010. After the summer floods of 2007, the PIT review led to the creation of the Flood and Water Management Act and the establishment then of the lead local flood authorities at county and unitary levels. So this is the flood risk management team. Hopefully you may remember some of us, it's been a while. We have Callum Smith there, who is covering Gedling, Broxtowe and Rushcliffe for us. Denise, who looks after Mansfield and Ashfield. Graham's busy in Bassetlaw, and Ross picks up Newark and Sherwood. And then we have Nick and Scott, who are our land drainage experts. They look at that side of the business. They work across the county, and then we've got Christina, who provides all our very valuable technical support. Very proud to work alongside them. They're always up for a challenge. They manage some incredibly difficult situations, often with folks who are not in the best place when they first come across our path. As an LLFA, we coordinate the strategic management of surface water, groundwater and ordinary watercourse flood risk. We don't have lead responsibility for rivers, reservoirs or sewer floodings. They're dealt with by other agencies. The 2010 Act gave the authority new powers, a statutory function and a whole raft of new tasks and responsibilities, as you can see in this list here. And I'm sure by now you're all very familiar with these because we update them here on a 6-month regular basis with you all. So the scale of the national challenge, there's around 5.2 million properties at risk nationally. You're 1 in 6 times more likely to flood in the UK than be burgled. And as you can see, flooding is very costly to the economy. We know that around 40% of businesses are unlikely to reopen after suffering a flooding event. An exception to the rule are these businesses in Ruddington that are shown here. We had 22 internally flooded last year, and they showed tremendous resilience. They all reopened during lockdown to provide those essential services to their communities, and they did that incredibly quickly. The estimated worth of possessions in UK households is around 266 billion that have no insurance against flooding. And as we often hear and we've seen regularly with our residents in the county, that some owners find it really, really difficult to try and afford insurance after they've flooded. So the scale of Nottinghamshire's challenge is obviously to look to reduce the flood risk across the county, making Nottinghamshire a more attractive place to live. The lady whose kitchen's shown here, she woke in the early hours to find her dog swimming around the kitchen in floodwaters over 4 foot deep, and it was over a year before she could return to reoccupy that property. We support and educate communities by reducing flood risk to help them more resilient, and obviously the most vulnerable in our communities are our priority. Interestingly, the demographic of most at risk from the effects of flooding are people aged between the age of 18 and 34. This group are reportedly less aware of the flood risk. They're less likely to know what to do if they become at risk of flooding. Our response to flooding has been tested during lockdown, most recently with Storm Christoph. We've made the appropriate adjustments to respond safely, and new opportunities to assist with the humanitarian response for the clinically vulnerable during the flooding event was afforded to us this time round, and it was really nice to work with new colleagues to look at some of the safety issues around that. There we go. Over 85,000 properties are at risk of flooding in Nottinghamshire, according to the Environment Agency's flood mapping. Since 2012, we've sadly responded to around 1,500 reports of internal flooding around the county, and communities in Nottinghamshire have endured 13 significant storms in 13 years. Significant rain events, which often see a month's worth of rain deposited in a very short period of time. They've become more prevalent over the last couple of years, with devastating impacts for those affected. The impacts here in Worktop Town Centre in 2019 saw over 300 properties and businesses internally flooded. So the tools of our trade, we have a number of tools that help inform our business and help us to navigate the complex world of flooding, from legislation and high-level strategic guidance through to our local ambitions and those of the County Council and our partners. Although sometimes we have different business drivers and cultures, we may come from different worlds, we share many common values. We're ambitious as an authority to have a vision for the future, and we made a promise in our council plan that we will support the at-risk communities to become more resilient to flood risk. So working with our partners, communities, and indeed yourselves as members, you all help us with that direction of travel to recognise our goals. So we have a seat at the table on several national, regional and local forums. This networking enables us to participate, to shape, to absorb lots of information and sometimes influence the direction of travel. At the very least, we get to understand the drivers, we hear it at source, and hopefully where we can respond appropriately to the challenges that we have. So the Flood Risk Management Action Plan, this should be familiar to some of you. We embarked on this early in lockdown. We took a review of the whole plan to shape things for the next 6 years. We work in 6-year programmes as this aligns with the national funding mechanisms and the reporting processes under the 2010 Act. And we brought this to committee last year for approval, and you may recall that it sets out our objectives, our aspirations for flood risk in Nottinghamshire. It's a very ambitious strategy. It encapsulates our communities, our colleagues and our partners. So clarity, water runs downhill. It sounds really easy, doesn't it? It runs downhill, it makes puddles. The complexity is around who owns the hill. It's one of the more tricky elements of our function, is working out who leads, what's happened, who's responsible, who owns what. Water knows no boundaries. As an LLFA, we sit in the middle of this, and the challenge is to try and influence, understand and coordinate activities with some of the levers that we have. We support other authorities. We have had tremendous support from VIA, emergency planning and other colleagues in the authority, especially when they're helping us to respond appropriately and facilitate good outcomes. So the harsh reality of flooding at 3 AM on a Sunday morning when the phone goes, you know folks are in trouble. Flooding does not usually tell us where it's going to happen. The experience tells us it can affect any community. 2020 saw the wettest February in the UK since reports began back in 1862. And these words are an extract from a letter we received from a resident in Radcliffe who woke in the early hours to find her home consumed by floodwater one Sunday morning. And I know lots of officers and members were out later on during the day when this event took place. It took 8 months for her to find the energy to write these words about how the flood had devastated her life, wading through filthy water in the darkness and discovering the damage to her precious possessions that just can't be replaced. The sentiment behind these words sums up many experiences of people in our communities whose lives, businesses, physical and mental health have been seriously impacted by flooding. So flood investigations, currently our significant flood events landscape looks like this, pretty evenly spread over the county. Over the last 9 years, we've published 37 Section 19 reports at 29 locations across the county. Very sadly, some of these communities, such as Loudham, Gotham, Tollerton, Cropple, Butler, they've suffered multiple flooding events. All of these communities are currently being looked at with a view to implementing appropriate flood mitigation measures for them. And NCC do not always lead on the delivery here, but where we don't, we are a very active and supportive partner in the development of those schemes for our communities. So what do we do when there's a flood? Almost always flooding events are at weekends or at very unsociable hours. We don't get much notice, and that often brings some real difficult challenges. For those suffering the devastation and the realisation that they are about to flood or are in the process of flooding, the response that we give needs to be right for the situation, and it's paramount that we get there and do that as quickly and as effectively as we can. When we have a flood event, our primary function is to understand what's happened. We'll attend site as soon as we're able, but we are not classed as first responders. We work alongside colleagues in VIA, emergency planning and other risk management authorities, and we move through these 3 stages, which involve significant levels of resource to accommodate really the need for community engagement and consultation. Communicating effectively with all those affected and involved is vital. Local knowledge is invaluable to us, and keeping the lines of communication open to ensure updates are consistent and appropriate is a really important element of the recovery process. Flooding in Sutton-on-Trent that you can see here saw a local bus company grounded, and floodwater was inside the buses even. The staff cars were floating around in the car park, and access to the site was really difficult, to say the least. And this family business spent the night emptying water out of the buses' headlights, looking after their staff, cleaning their stock, and amazingly, the following day they managed to put on a service. And the other photograph shows our community consultation event a couple of weeks after the flood, where we went to talk to individuals about their experiences so we could gain a better understanding of the challenges that we were facing. So community support and advice. A key part of our role is helping members of the community to navigate the complex world of flood risk, the roles and responsibilities, and the key questions that we're asked following the devastation caused by flooding is: who's going to help us? Why did it happen? Who's responsible? We help by being there with our colleagues via emergency planning and the other flood risk partners. And we try and use our knowledge and experience to answer questions to help communities in the recovery process and ultimately to improve their resilience to future flooding. The images show the devastation caused to an eBay business that was run from home in a garage, that was absolutely obliterated. Unfortunately, they didn't have any insurance and their road to recovery would be very difficult. And the chap who's talking to Nick, one of our land drainage officers here, woke with his wife to find the floodwater was halfway up his bed, and that was the first that actually they had flooded that evening. So financial assistance. Following the severe flooding we had in November 2019, the County Council initiated a hardship grant for those affected by flooding. And this fund was a lifeline to many who were left without homes or businesses after that event. We met firsthand with colleagues on the multi-agency response, tenants who had been put out on the street by their landlords, who had very young children, who were in need of specialist services, whose relatives were not in this country, and for some who English was not their first language and communication was very challenging. They had no place to go. They sat on the bus station floor where we had opened a drop-in centre, sobbing and holding on to one another. And I know that a number of members attended and tried to support that community in their hour of need. I'll never forget how it felt that day. But by late evening, emergency accommodation had been found for most of the community, and other community leaders offered up safe places for the rest of the displaced. The customer service centre took over 2,000 calls during that event, and over 1,000 payments were processed as a result of that flooding. So significant flood risk schemes. This list is our current large capital schemes. We're delivering these on the ground now. We're hoping by the end of March this year that we will have reduced the risk to around 550 properties and businesses in the county. The authorities won a couple of awards for these schemes. Most recently, the Institution of Civil Engineers gave us a small project award for the property flood resilience work that had been done in Southwell. So moving on to slowing the flow, natural flood management is an initiative we've embraced over the last couple of years. These two schemes at Southwell have seen multiple benefits delivered. Working in partnership with landowners and the local primary school, these works complement very well the corporate environmental policy that we have in Notts. Funding was attracted from local levy and European funding streams, and these schemes have been delivered in partnership with the Trent Rivers Trust and the National Flood Forum. These two projects not only complement the larger engineering scheme that's currently underway in Southwell, but they have been proven to reduce flooding, as we had no internal flooding on the last two significant events in that area. So moving on to property resilience, last year £1 million of county capital was made available to help and protect the most vulnerable communities where they've been unable to secure external funding or where they are still at risk despite the installation of flood mitigation schemes. This county-wide programme is delivering bespoke solutions for these individual properties that repeatedly flood internally, and will hopefully prevent those floodwaters from entering the properties. And in the long term, that will reduce the consequences and recovery time for those that are affected. Moving to Ashfield, this is a real example of partnership working here at Titchfield Park, bringing together different organisations to understand each other's expectations and delivering, I'd say, with true efficiency. By combining the skills and vision of Nottinghamshire County Council via Ashfield District Council and our PFR deliverers, White House Construction, and the local residents who have really driven this project forward, we're on target to deliver a scheme that will protect almost 90 properties from flooding, as well as all the environmental and recreational benefits. And this is one of Hucknall's main destination parks, so a real good success story there for Ashfield. Partnership investment. As far as cost benefit goes, I think this lineup of 11 are in the Premier League. Against a county capital investment of £1.5 million, the authority has attracted just shy of 80 million over the past 6 years for various flood mitigation works. This match and partnership funding has been secured from DEFRA, local levy, Severn Trent Water, Ashfield, Newark and Sherwood District Councils, the EA. We even had €200 from a European funding pot for Southwell. And it's created some real opportunities to safeguard hundreds of properties, and these schemes, when they're complete, will hopefully do that. They'll deliver multi benefits, and the other perhaps issue to remind ourselves of is, this committee approves our local levy contributions to the RFCC every year, which is around £280,000-ish, and we have had over 30% of that regional pot reinvested in the local authority, so that's turned itself into a multi-million-pound return for the authority. So the Pipeline Capital Programme, as we come to the end of the first 6-year programme, this is the pipeline of schemes that we have developed for the future, which we brought through this committee last September. These projects are now ready to move forward to the next year programme. We'll need to undergo feasibility and cost benefit analysis, some of which has commenced already. The authority secured £455,000 last year to initiate these studies from DEFRA as part of a spending review by the EA to pump prime the next 6 years programme. So we are a little ahead of the game here. Many of these involve a partnership approach to secure the delivery, and we'll need that for the financial validation. With the Flying Start, we've got a funding application currently being evaluated for Girton by DEFRA. They announced a £200 million initiative last year to fund 25 projects, so we're hoping to hear in the spring if we've been successful on that application. So the role of the planning process, as an LFA, we have a statutory consultee role for all local planning authorities in the county. Our role is to support the LPAs in their decision-making process and endeavour to ensure that surface water is managed effectively in the county. Over 4,000 applications have been received by us since 2015, and around 3,500 bespoke responses have been produced, and these applications relate to around 110,000 properties across the county. Moving on to land drainage, we've got over 1,600 miles of watercourse in the county. A significant percentage of these are riparian owned and fall to riparian owners to maintain them. That often comes as a shock to some landowners, and we've recently produced a leaflet to help them understand their responsibilities, but our land drainage officers spend a lot of time talking to riparian owners. The maintenance of these watercourses is critical to the effective management of our surface water across the county. It's really important. Our officers inspect the watercourses across the county regularly. And when we're looking to rectify issues, if we need to, we try and give people some time to do this, but if it's not done in a timely manner, we can serve notice under the Land Drainage Act for works to be undertaken. If you wish to make a change to a watercourse, you need to apply to the authority for permission. Over the years, we've seen a few poorly constructed modifications and sadly plenty of watercourses used as dumping grounds. Once we have issued a consent, we then follow that up with an on-site compliance check to undertake that the works that have been carried out are of a satisfactory standard and they don't have a detrimental impact on others or indeed the flow of the watercourse. Critical assets. We have a significant number of assets across the county that play a crucial role in the management of flood risk. Our officers routinely inspect these, especially during times of flooding, to ensure that there are no blockages and that the watercourses are not compromised in any way. Moving on to our web pages, effective communication is essential, especially now. We've recently refreshed our web pages to improve our offer in the hope that it will be more accessible and user-friendly and ultimately help capture a wider audience. We're also hoping to work with NOTS app to get live flood alerts to be able to be issued on there when we're in times of flooding. Moving on to some of the technology bits now. So the authorities just acquired 3 drones to assist in the understanding and evidencing of flood risk impacts in our communities and to monitor the condition of watercourses. This socially distanced photograph was taken 2 days ago when the drones landed, and these are our volunteers from across the police department. They're off to undertake their CAA training in May, hopefully, and then we'll be looking to have our maiden flights in the summer. The ambition is to support other areas of the business and explore wider applications for the drones once we've got some experience and we are fully qualified as users. That's an opportunity. The photograph there is Royal Mail Depot at Worksop, where there was some drone footage taken the day after the event, and it certainly showed us very early on the size of the task and the devastation that had taken place. Moving on to telemetry. Telemetry provides the ability for us to remotely monitor watercourses and trash screens. We're currently trialling this approach at 4 sites in Ashfield, Bassetlaw, Gedling and Rushcliffe. The trial will be reviewed later this year and we hope to introduce more across the county when we can see how effective the information is. And these 4 trial sites are being looked after by the districts and the local flood risk setup. So this slide brings together, I think, most of the headline facts that I've talked about in the presentation. £8.3 million has been invested in schemes to date across the county and will hopefully result in circa 550 properties and businesses being protected from flood risk. Good progress has been made to date. We've built some great foundations. We're meeting all our statutory obligations. We have some very effective networks and strong partnerships. However, we face a number of significant challenges going forward. We have 13 significant events in 15 years. Climate change threatens to increase the occurrence of such events. We need to continue to build confidence with external investment, partnership, working opportunities, and to support the cohesive delivery of flood mitigation across the county. We are hopefully making a difference to our communities. Each and every one of these slides I've shared today, I think, shows the drivers and the desire to make a difference to the lives and well-being of our communities across the county. Our strategy provides the cornerstone to our approach. Our ambition provides the vision and the resources within the authority. And many of our partners provide the ability to deliver to different communities. That more or less brings me to the end. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for helping us understand your communities and how to help them. Thank you for all your support, for picking up the phone, to share your information with us, for all you do on the ground, at whatever hour of the day or night it is when your communities are in the throes of a flood event. And we will continue to keep you updated on progress through this committee reporting process. So thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Excellent report, and thank you for going through in such detail for us. Before I go to members of the committee, I'd like to propose the recommendation, which is on page 22, that members consider whether there are any actions they require in relation to the report. The second recommendation is the committee endorse the work outlined in the report. And the third recommendation is committee encourages all agencies involved to seek and implement suitable measures to alleviate flooding in Nottinghamshire as soon as reasonably possible. So I propose that recommendation. And a seconder, please.
I'll second that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rostance. Any members in the committee wish to speak? Councillor Rostance, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Sue, for another great presentation. It really puts into perspective the amount of work that the flood risk management team do, but also the amount of people who've been affected over the last few years. It has been immense, and the little excerpt from the resident that you showed really hits home that households and businesses will be picking up the pieces long after the incident has happened. Which is why the work that you and the team do is so important, I guess. And I want to send a massive thank you again to you and the team for all the hard work over the last few years. Not only have you put together an unbelievable amount of Section 19 reports, 37, unbelievable, but also the compliments I get about the care and compassion that the team have shown to those affected is fantastic and really humbling. A lot of these events actually happen over the weekends, and the team are out there with these drop-in sessions at a drop of a hat. And it really shows the great ethic that the team have got. And the £160,000 of hardship funding to help those residents is a little bit of funding, but at a time of need, it's really important to them. And I know it's been really well received. I know at the budget, I mentioned the amazing work the team have done to bring in the external funding for different projects, and nearly 80 million is a staggering amount. So again, hats off to you in the team. Actually met up with Ross and the White House group to look at some of the property flood resilience that they've been installing on Titchfield Park, all the houses affected by that. And the team are brilliant, and that is a great scheme, which is just 5-minute walk from where I am. And we do some great partnership work in, and it showed with the amount of people that we work with on those slides. It's really fantastic. We've got some great work in the pipeline. And this may be the last chance I get to speak on the subject. So I just wanted to again say a massive thank you to you and the team. And one last thing, we was talking about hair at the start of this meeting before we went live. And where did you get that picture from Gary Wood from? The crew. It's the first time I've actually seen him with hair. But Sue, thank you very much for all your work, and please pass my thanks on to the team. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Rostance. I've got Councillor Greaves down for a comment. Thanks, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thank you for that report. So absolutely brilliant. There's just one or two things that springs to mind. Is that when you say that people are waking up to the flooding in their house, that's very much true. And so, what are we doing regarding early warning for these flood events? I mean, today with weather forecasting, it's getting more and more accurate, the weather forecasting. And so what are we doing with early warning for residents in flood areas? Another question is, Worksop, you said 300, in your reports, there's 320 properties were flooded. I thought it were nearly 400. I wonder if you could, if you can say that that's correct or incorrect. And obviously, in Worksop, in my ward where they were in 2019, 7th of November, that was it so badly with the flooding, and the roads was devastated down there. And on King Street in Worksop, it was resurfaced, but actually what happened there was the top damaged surface layer wasn't removed, and so another 3 inches was put on top of that. So whereas before it was 6 inches before it poured into the residents' front door, now it's only 3 inches. Could you tell me what's going to be done to mitigate that? And also on flood wardens, obviously we know with COVID-19 it's causing massive problems of recruitment and difficulties of recruitment of flood wardens. So can you give us an update of where we are with that? And looking through the report, you mentioned Shire Oaks, which also suffered with the flooding, but there was no mention of the parish of Rhodesia, which is just down the road, which also suffered badly with the flooding. So if you could give us an update on that, please. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. I've got Councillor Hollis, and then I'll come back at the end, Sue, so you can respond in all of them in one go. Thank you. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sue, for the report as well. Obviously, it makes some quite interesting reading for issues across Ashfield, but particularly a few concerns. Obviously, firstly, picking up on past work, Thoresby Vale, where we've had Thoresby Dale, sorry, where we've had work done before, and then subsequently it's not worked. And obviously, with regards to the seemingly quite fantastic work we're rolling out across the county, how reassured are we that the substantial thousands? I mean, you'll be aware that we spent considerable sums of money there in Hucknall, and it still didn't do the job. I just want to make sure that we've got some confidence in the schemes that we are rolling out. And then the second question, really, and I can't help but smile, Councillor Austin, at the comments you made. I mean, I think watching your recent video, I'd like you to thank you for drawing your attention to the good work that Ashfield's done, and I would ask you to stick to claiming credit for the work you've actually done yourself. And I think this is another example. Sue will be quite clear in the fact that Ashfield Council have actually fronted this flooding work project. It was our team that drew the scheme up, obviously managed it, recommended it, and we are very grateful for the County Council's support in what is an Ashfield District Council project. Obviously, our staff member Paul Crawford, a fantastic team member, has been doing considerable amounts of work up there on Titchfield Park. This is on top of some of the other works we've of course been doing, as we detailed in Sue's report. But Phil, I mean, I'd only ask if obviously we want a good working relationship, but let's stick to the truth here and not claiming credit for other people's work is all I'd say. But I know it's silly season. I know we've got to play a little bit of pantomime in some ways, but I didn't think that'd come from you. That's all. But anyway, thank you, Sue, for the report, and I really do appreciate the work you're doing across not only Ashfield District but all across Nottinghamshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. It is teamwork as well. One can't do it without the other.
Chairman, I just want to say I did mention it was partnership working and how well we've worked together with Paul Crawford.
Yeah.
But just want to add that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. I've got Councillor Guilfoyle, I think. Thank you. Thanks, Glenn.
Chairman, thank you for that. Thank you, Sue. As everybody said, thank you for the presentation, and also I know you thank members for their work, but again, thank you to all your staff for the work that they do. And I think we mentioned it before, the way that you got to us locally. We had a video conference just prior to the events that could or could not have occurred recently. Okay. Luckily they didn't, but you came back with at least we had that discussion and we were able to put things in place, which was much appreciated. I think the key thing that you know has been said and has actually just been said again is partnership. We are not the masters of the destiny on this occasion, and that makes it very difficult when we're trying to deal with the flooding issue, because a lot of it relies upon the EA, a lot of it on government funding, and also the time in which it takes to actually do the studies and come up with a scheme. And I think that's the problem that we have in getting over to the public at large. I know at the moment there's a big. I'm not on Facebook, but I've been told, because I don't go on the thing, but I've been told that, you know, the candidates from the Tories are criticising the fact that there doesn't seem to be any plans coming out about Worksop. Clearly, they've not read the messages that have been put on our website, or understand the difficulties in time constraints. That things don't just happen overnight, and actually, you know, we haven't got the resources to actually deal with the demands right across the board. So that leads, in the sense demand, leads me to the question about the contribution that we currently make as a council towards flooding. And just wondering, when you talked about the 230k levy that we do, whether if that was increased in any way, whether that would drag in more resources. Because I think, you know, that's always an issue. You know, we can put a contribution in for things, but if we had a bigger contribution, would we not be able to draw in more resources, which would mean that we would probably get, in some cases, get the work done quicker, or would get more areas done. You know, work's done in more areas. Another issue that I'd looked at is the telemetry. And I know the issues that you've put a camera down on Pricewell Road, and I know that that's working very well, and that the EA monitor that. And I those monitors versus weather reports, because I've not got as much faith as Kevin in the weather reports sometimes. But the monitors that you've got there, actually you can see the levels of the river as it's rising in real time, and I think that's important. And I think it's also important for the community at large who suffer when the river rises, and just wondering about how we can actually put that out on our website. And I know we've spoken about this at the meetings that we have with the EA about trying to put that on to give the public a bit of reassurance, and also to stop them in some cases putting themselves in dangerous positions trying to look at the level of the river when it's bad weather and the banks are slippy and everything else, but they want to get up there just to see how high it is. So I think that would be good if we could put those cameras up onto our website so we can see that. The other one I welcome the contribution that we're making to drones and the training that our staff are doing. Drones are another tool in the kit, and I think they're an important tool, not just for that in general, but also for our role in emergency planning, and be able to do, deploy a drone where that can see areas where we wouldn't want to put staff in any danger. So I welcome that. I just wondered whether that they've got the infrared capacity as well, because that's key. A lot of things don't happen between the 9 to 5 work area, but and I know it's usually Saturday night, midnight, when you get the call, and clearly things like that, a drone would, if it's got infrared, the capability, it will be a great advantage. They're my few. I know. I think also, just again about. I looked at the latest report that was sent out regarding flooding, but I think if we can, and I know it adds more work, do some more localized reports. Because to be honest, as you know, the people at Worksop, bless them, aren't bothered about what's going off in Southall, and the people in Southall, bless them, aren't really bothered about what's going off in Worksop. They're concerned about what's outside their own front door. So, in the sense of trying to have it that we have a breakdown, of a list of what's going off, and we can have it around. You can search for a particular area and find exactly where we are up to date on what we're doing for the area, because there is a concern that it's taking time, and Bruce always says, it took us 5 years from the original incident in Southall, and that is a long time for people to wait and to be in fear of the damage coming to the property. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. There's 2 more people indicated to speak, and I'm going to draw a line on that because it could end up just being a flooding meeting. And I would ask Sue and Gary Wood if on individual matters in areas, unless it concerns the whole areas, all the areas, to go back individually on some of the questions that have been asked, because otherwise it'll just we will be an hour and a half into a meeting on the first item. So I don't want to cut debate, but those councillors do and would like an answer. So I've got Councillor Richard Butler and Councillor Bruce Lawton, please, after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I actually agree with Councillor Guilfoyle about his comment to it, like him, I'm not on Facebook, but I don't agree with him about the weather forecast. I actually think the weather forecast, certainly in recent months and years, have been remarkably accurate. And when we had the flooding issues earlier this year, it said it will rain on whatever day in the afternoon, and boy, it did, and they were spot on. And that was, I think, very helpful to our team to be on standby and generally speaking in the right places. So it's good that the technology is there, and the forecasting, as far as I can see from my experience, is quite good, and we make maximum use of that. With regards to our work, I have noticed an improvement in the last year or so since things changed around a little bit in the team about the contact and communication with those who are affected by the floods. We all know that residents who wake up in the morning to find the kitchen flooded or whatever, it's a very lonely place for them. It's devastating, and I have seen how the response from our flood team has been faster and quicker than perhaps in the past. So I do appreciate that. Finally, for now, often the county council or the council gets blamed for the flooding and the damage and all the rest of it, and you can understand people's frustrations, but we all know, or those of us here know, that very often it's the actions or the lack of action by the riparian landowners that have an impact on our public roads and highways and all the rest of it, and the council has to come along and clear it up. Are we sure that we're being robust enough and clear with riparian landowners as to what their responsibilities are? Because I'm not going to get too parochial, I won't mention places, but I know there's flooding areas have been regularly flooded in my part of the world, and we know that one of the causes is that the landowner, a farmer, isn't digging the ditches, isn't doing what they should do. Are we being robust enough, and have we got suitable processes in place? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Lawton.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I promised not to, mention that exemplar district council, Ashfield District Council. It must be really uplifting, Phil, living in Ashfield District Council area. My comment really is to Sue is that I recognise, my problem is I recognise most of your photos. So, even to Sutton-on-Trent, Nursery Dyke, I recognise most of the photos that you've been putting up, which really makes the point that I live in and deal with an area which is high in flooding incidents. And I think the message we've all got to take back from Sue's report is that when you look at the incidents this year, and Southall isn't on that list, and Southall is I was chairman of the flood stakeholders group, but we have delivered as a county council for those residents and not sorted their flooding issues, but we have managed it in such a way that we didn't flood in February, for example, which is a major positive for this authority. So a big thank you, really. I don't represent Southall anymore, it's Roger Jackson's, but because it changes in the boundary, but thank you for all the work that the team have put in place. And finally, Glyn, the local, just for clarification really, because I was involved in it, the local levy is based on head of population. It is an issue as far as many areas that don't flood are concerned, because they're paying, but they continue to pay, and that money then is reallocated into those areas that flood. So it's to them really we owe a debt of gratitude, and it was one of the reasons why the Severn Trent Regional Flood and Coastal Committee was changed to the Trent Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, because Birmingham got fed up with paying for everybody else's flooding issues. So just really clarification of it. So you can't really put more into the pot to get more out. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I know that there are non-committee members wanting to speak, but I'm sorry that we are over an hour into it. If you want a sentence, then please say. I'm sorry.
Can I do a sentence, Chairman?
Yes, you can.
Can I say on behalf of my residents, thank you to Sue and the team, to Rob Fisher and the team, and in particular to Gary Wood, who took over sorting out the fact that 6 residents lost the road and couldn't get into Collingham and couldn't get out. Via have been excellent. Everybody has. And I have to say to you that the EA are working very well with the residents of Girton. And when all this is over, we shall get finished off doing our flood wardens, because I've got some excellent ones. Sue knows that. Gary knows that. And I can help you sort out your flood wardens, because that's the way forward, and then they can organise themselves to go onto the EA website to be part of the EA. So with the weather forecasting, they get to know everything. My flood warden at Girton sends everything out, and those people who live in flood areas, if they could just be on the internet and have an email address, it would help tremendously. So perhaps that's something we could consider doing with the residents in future. But thank you, Sue. Thank you to Graham. Thank you to Ross in particular, because they look after my area. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Maureen. I think it was 2 sentences.
Well, I think it was a
I'll let you off. Councillor Martin, can you be short and brief, please? I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I'd just like to say it's one of the best working partnerships I've encountered whilst I've been a county councillor, and I'd like to thank Sue Jakes and the team for doing all the work they do, and especially to my flood risk officer who's just moved on, Denise McAndrew, and Nick Clark. They are absolutely exemplary, brilliant, absolutely fantastic, and the collaborative work between the district council and the county council.
You've muted, Councillor Martin.
Oh, sorry, did you hear any of that?
Yeah, we saw all but the last couple of words.
Oh, well, I'd just like to thank you all for the collaboration. It's really fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Sue, it's thrown back at you for some short responses, and then I think the team will have to get back to members on the individual questions asked to you, if that's okay. Thank you.
Chairman. Yeah, I certainly agree. We'll come back to everybody with some individual responses. Some really good questions there. Thank you. Just perhaps come back to Councillor Greaves on one of his points about Rhodesia. We do have some flood study money that was part of our SR20 bid to do some flood study work in Rhodesia, so we've certainly not forgotten about them or missed them, so apologies for not mentioning them in the presentation, but we will pick those up. I think lots of the other questions are quite detailed, and we will be able to provide those, and I'll come back to individual members on those. I just perhaps ask Gary if he has any of the other points that he'd like to come back on.
Thanks, Sue. Gary?
Yeah, just really quickly, I think there's some really good ideas, some really good challenges there, and Sue says we'll come back to members individually. I think we've made good progress. The photo that you saw, Councillor Rossens, was in 2009, just before the legislation on flooding came out in 2010. I remember we appointed an individual officer for this, and we've gone from there and we've grown and we're still learning. And so all the things that Sue is doing around innovation, keeping the community at the centre of it and keeping members at the centre of it are really important, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move to the vote then, please. So are there any votes against the recommendations? Are there any abstentions? No, then it's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Sue, for bringing the report and members for the debate. So I'm now going to move to item 5, which is the Communities and Place Performance and Finance Report for Q3, Place Core Data Sets. And I'd like to ask Adrian Smith if he would like to say a few words to introduce the paper. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, you've got your usual update on the performance framework for Q3. As we've discussed in previous meetings, it's been something of a challenging year on a performance front, given the way services have had to be introduced and then adapted or indeed stood down in some cases during COVID. But we'll particularly, I guess, at this point want to draw your attention as we move towards the end of the financial year to the budget update. That's the period 9 update that you've got in your pack. And at this point, we're forecasting an overspend of £124,000. That amounts to 0.01% of our budget in total. So whilst it does amount to an overspend, let's see it in that perspective. At that point, Chair, I'll hand back to you, and I'm sure I and my colleagues on the call will happily take any questions or comments on specific items. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The recommendation on page 29 that committee considers whether there are any actions it requires in relation to the performance information on the council services for communities and place for the period April the 1st to December the 31st, 2020. So I'll move that recommendation. A seconder, please.
I'll second that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from members? Councillor Creamer, I've got you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a very quick one. Page 26 of 136 on the waste service, right at the bottom, number 9, it says that 40% is recycling. Now, again, I do understand that COVID has had an effect, but it says the 40% is on target. Is that a new target from the 52% due to COVID or the existing one? So it's just a clarification, basically.
I think Derek Higton's with us to be able to answer that, I think. Are you connected, Derek?
Thank you, Councillor Cotton.
Thanks, Derek.
Morning, members. Yes, in terms of the target for recycling, we have adjusted things this year because of the obvious impact of COVID on the opening of our household waste recycling centres, certainly in the first lockdown. So we've had to adjust our performance targets in that context. We've also taken account of the kind of national trends as well, because what we're starting to see is I think the report mentioned it, is some stagnation in terms of recycling rates around the country as well. So we're cognizant of that as we anticipate the government's new waste strategy, which is due to be published in the next 18 months or so.
Thank you, Chair. It would just have been nice to actually see the revised target in black and white, as it is a public document. That was all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers at all? I can't see any. Just waiting if an officer can see anything. No? Okay. Right, okay, we'll move to the vote then. Are there any votes against the recommendation? Any abstentions? Okay, it's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Item 6 is charges for highways and transport services 2021 to 2022. I'll ask Gary Wood, please, if he would like to make brief comments on the report, please. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. This is our annual report that we bring on our highways and transport charges. Generally, you'll see there's an inflationary increase applied to the charges, and they're in the appendix to the report. I'm not going to highlight anything else because of time, but I'll just mention that the recommendations there, 1 and 2, and I'll hand back to you, Councillor Cotty.
Thank you very much. The two recommendations, the first one is approval is given for the proposed changes for highways and transport service charges. Can't even read. Charges for highways and transport service documents and data for the financial year, April the 1st, 2021, as detailed in the appendix. And the second one is all charges for highway services continued to be reviewed annually. I'll propose the recommendation. Seconder, please.
I'll second that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members? Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Chairman. Inflationary. Quite a good comment that, actually, because on page 4 of the appendices, fourth from the top, residence parking scheme. I don't know whether this is a misprint, but I believe they've gone up to £35, the residence parking permit. In the appendices it says 25, but residents have been bombarding me that it's gone up to 35, and they're quite angered by it. Now this is a 40% increase. Not an inflationary increase. This is a 40% increase in residence parking permits. Now, if this is right, which I'm sure it is, and I'm sure this is a misprint in the appendices, a 40% increase at this particular time is absolutely appalling lack of judgment in middle of a pandemic, because this was brought forward earlier last year to go to £35, which we voted against at that particular time also. But I'm appalled it hasn't been withdrawn and you're keeping it at £35. This is no way inflationary increase. This is just a price hike of 40%. That's appalling. That's appalling judgment on residents who are really, really struggling at this time with work and the lack of work at this particular time. People are really struggling in this pandemic, and to be hiking the price up by 40%, and there's hundreds of residents in my ward that have been inflicted by this, and I imagine a lot more throughout the county. So inflationary, I don't think so. Hike, definitely. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. And just to add my support for what Councillor Greaves has just said, he said it absolutely perfectly. I mean, I'd personally describe it as a tax on residents. I mean, you don't get the choice to pay it. If you've got a car and you live on a street with a parking permit scheme, often these are quite vast areas. You can't park your car anywhere else other than on the street, particularly if you've got things like shopping, maybe children or elderly parents. You know, you've got to be able to park on your street. And I think it's exactly as Councillor Greaves described it, awful, and a real wrong time to be charging. I mean, I do agree with Councillor Greaves that we did vote on it being, well, you voted on it being 35, and the Ashfield Independents and Labour obviously objected. But I wonder if it is a misprint in the report here. But even at £25, I have great concerns about it. I wonder if, I mean, I'd personally look at if we can make it cheaper, if not free, particularly for one permit per household. But if we can't do that, something like a tapering scheme. So particularly in certain areas where it's first introduced, have £10 in the first year, maybe 15 in the second, and go up just to get people accustomed to it. But exactly, I just fundamentally disagree with that particular charge and a number of the other charges, frankly, listed in this report. So I'll be voting against it, this documentation. But I'd certainly like the officers to investigate the implications on reducing the residence parking scheme across Nottinghamshire, but particularly in areas where residents have no alternative where to park. So, and by the sounds of it, Councillor Greaves would support me in that, and we could maybe look at that together in the coming months as well. Thank you.
Well, the reason I have a parking scheme there is because they can't park there. So the parking scheme makes it so they can park there. I'll go on to Councillor Guilfoyle. Thank you. I'm sorry, I struggle to see the hands on this.
That's all right, Chairman. Chairman, can I just ask for a point of clarification? You've actually moved in speaking to this report and you've seconded it. Is that right?
Yeah.
So therefore the paper is as set. So the charges as listed is currently, it says in the paperwork which Kevin highlighted, the paperwork I've got says that the charge is £25 and the charge for 2021-22 is £25. So therefore that means that there is no increase that's being proposed. You've moved in second of that report. I think I'm right in saying, Kevin, that if that is what's going forward, we would support the paper. If that's been moved and seconded, and so I'd like you to clarify the position, please. Otherwise, you'll have to. Well, that's up to you what you do. But clearly, you've moved and seconded this as a report. So I would say that we're voting on the report as it stands, Chairman.
Thank you. Is Gary available, please? Can you come back in, please?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Cotton. I must apologise to all members that it is an error. So it should say £35 for both years. This was debated at committee previously, and the charge was increased to £35. And so I do apologise that there's an error there.
Chairman, notwithstanding what has been said,
yep,
constitutionally, this paper is here. It's been moved and seconded. You either accept the paper or you've got to remove it.
I'm just waiting for some advice because I don't know the answer to the question. Hang on a sec.
Oh, I know what the answer is.
I'm going to pause the meeting for 2 or 3 minutes to find out. Be back in a minute.
Thank you.
Councillor Guilfoyle, I didn't think the opposition members we'd be moving seconding the report as printed, to be fair. So well pointed out. Look, nothing like having to make a bad decision twice.
This winter, more than ever, with COVID-19 still circulating, we need help to reduce all avoidable risks. You can help protect the NHS, social care and loved ones by getting the flu vaccine. You may be eligible for the free vaccine at your GP or local pharmacy if you are over 65, pregnant or have a long-term condition. Find out if you are eligible at nhs.uk/staywell. Children up to year 7 can get the free nasal spray at school or through their GP if they are below school age. If you are not eligible for the free vaccine, you can pay for it at your local pharmacy. The flu vaccination does not give you flu. It reduces the risk of catching flu, as well as spreading it to others. If you had the vaccination in the past, that will not protect you as the flu strain changes every year, so you need to have a new one this year. It is also important to wash your hands often with warm water and soap. Use tissues when you cough or sneeze, and bin used tissues as quickly as possible. Thank you for helping to protect yourself and loved ones this winter.
and emphasising it's the current.
Right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We're now live streaming again, so the meeting has resumed. In terms of the advice, in terms of the Constitution, Section 521 of the Constitution at paragraph 33B, for alterations and amendments to recommendations and motions. Alterations can be made and accepted during a debate to update the motion in order to maintain accuracy. And therefore that means that the original mover can make the alteration and the original seconder can second it, and then that becomes the substantive motion without a vote, because it's not an amendment, it's an alteration. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. So as the proposer, the correct information is at the moment it is £35, and that the correction should be made within the paperwork. And I'd like a seconder for that, please, which would be Councillor Rostons, please.
Second that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so that has corrected an error made in the papers, and it's reopened for debate before we go to a vote. Okay, we go to the vote then. Right, those against the recommendations, please.
Could we have a recorded vote, please, Chairman?
Seconded.
Yep, you can have a recorded vote.
Okay, if you just bear with me 1 second, I'll just get my recorded voting list. 1 second, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So what I'll now do is call upon committee members in alphabetical order to indicate whether they are for, against, or abstaining in respect of the altered and which is now substantive motion. So the first councillor is Councillor Pauline Allen. Pauline, can you indicate? Against. Thank you. Councillor Richard Butler.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor John Cotty.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jim Creamer.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Greaves.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Against.
Councillor Handley.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hollis.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Lawton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ogle.
For.
4. And Councillor Phil Rostons.
4.
Thank you. So, Chair, that is 6 votes for and 5 votes against, with no abstentions. Thank you.
You're muted, John.
John, you're muted.
Is Gary still with us?
I'm still here, and I just
Okay,
really want
thanks,
to
Gary.
apologise for that error in the
Don't worry,
report.
accidents happen. Thank you, Gary.
Shall I move on to the next report?
Yes,
Councillor Coffey?
yes, I'm
Yep.
just waiting for you. Sorry, I did ask. I didn't know if you were connected or not. So it's item 7.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks approval to update the staffing structure in the Highways and Transport Group, and the changes are designed to respond to recent changes in our sort of operating context across the group, and the details set out in the report. It's just a few things I'll mention quickly. So the key aspects are to improve the resource to manage the integrated transport schemes programme, and there's an additional member of staff in the proposals to support the increasing claims for new rights of way. There's changes to the structure to accommodate the introduction of the utility permit scheme, and then finally there's a post to support the work in improving our local bus provision and community transport. The proposed overall are cost neutral, and the staff and the unions have been consulted as part of the process. And I'll pass back to you, Councillor Cotty, for the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. The recommendation is on page 50 of the pack. Approval given to reorganise the staffing structure of Highways and Transport Group as set out in report and Appendix 1. I propose that recommendation.
Second that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I can't see any hands. Is there any?
I've got my hand up, Councillor.
Sorry, I couldn't see it. Yes, Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I've not really got a massive feeling either way in regards to the report. My only slight discomfort was that it's obviously quite a fundamental change to what is a small part of the county council team now, obviously with VIA being the largest part of the highways department. But making such a fundamental change this close to an election, because obviously it's certain that there's going to be a new administration after the election, or whether that be a new Conservative. Well, it's going to be a new Conservative administration, or with a new leader, or opposition members taking over. So whatever happens, 100% we're going to have a new administration, and to make a fundamental change in the embers of this one seems slightly odd, because of course there might be a direction change with whoever takes over in 70 odd days time, and I just wondered if it's so necessary to do this now, because the last thing we want, looking at it from a staffing perspective, is to mess the staff around. It seems slightly ludicrous that we might want to change things afterwards, or whoever's in charge change things afterwards, and then to change these staff again, and to, how can I say, delay 70 days. We wouldn't be messing staffing or unions or anything like that around as well. So it seems to make sense from both the management side and workers side to delay. But that was my only real feeling, Chair. And a lot of the substantive report, I can't say I've got massive feelings either way. You have to trust the officers to say that this is what needs doing. But that's really my comments to make. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the comments, but I do trust the officers, and I think it's the right thing to do. If there's a different administration going forward and they wish to do it differently, then that's fine. But I think we need to get this done and move on. Any other speakers? Okay, we'll move to the vote then. Thank you. Are there any votes against the recommendation? Any abstentions?
Yes.
Abstain, Chair.
Thank you. So that's 4. What are you doing, Councillor Hollis? Because I can't see you on the screen.
So abstain, Chair.
Thank you. And those in favour, please show. Thank you. Have you got that, Noel? Okay, that's 6 in favour and 5 against. Is that correct or not?
Abstentions.
Abstentions, sorry. Yeah, my apologies. Okay. Yes, it's carried. Thank you very much. Item 8 is conservation internship to support the work of Nottinghamshire Biodiversity Action Group. And I think Heather Stokes is going to present. Thank you, Heather.
I think it's actually Sally who's going to introduce.
Oh,
mute, Sally.
Yes,
apologies. Thank you, Sally.
Yes, just briefly, this is to seek members' approval to for us to be able to recruit a further temporary conservation intern. We have had someone, a temporary post for this last year, and it's been really successful. And there is partnership funding, so we wish to continue that, because the internee has been delivering some excellent work with the Nottinghamshire Biodiversity Action Group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've now got Councillor Hollis's hand appearing, but I need to just propose and second it. The committee approves the recruitment of a further student placement to the post of conservation intern on a temporary basis for a period of up to 10 months. I propose that recommendation.
I'll second that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. And really, I speak in support of what the paperwork we've got in front of us. I'd just like to thank Sally firstly for the positive report. Members will be fully aware how much of an important issue ecological issues, environmental issues are to the Ashfield Independent.
Sorry,
but particularly with regards to this placement. Members will be well aware that we have a native species, the kidney vetch, in Ashfield, which is very prevalent across virtually all parts of Ashfield. And the dingy skipper butterfly, that's its main food source. And the Wildlife Trust have drawn an absolutely fabulous plan together for the Ashfield district to protect this very species and the butterfly in turn. So we certainly see this kind of report under Sally's direction as a real positive step, actually, not only for the dingy skipper butterfly, but also other species that are, of course, prevalent in some circumstances, unique to Nottinghamshire. And I think it's part of our heritage. You know, Nottinghamshire is not just about Robin Hood; it's about the species and people that live and breathe in it. I don't know, Councillor Lawton's laughing about this, but it's actually quite a big issue. You know, it's something that, you know, we are custodians of not only the public of Nottinghamshire but the wildlife in it. And probably my only minor criticism is the fact that it doesn't go far enough. I'd love to see this person, after the 10 months of taking them on board, become permanent. I'd certainly like to see plans explored to investigate bolstering the team that Sally leads, because, you know, we have got plans. You know, there's all districts and boroughs across Nottinghamshire will be seeing housing applications go up. And it's often the wildlife that suffers. And as a county council, we're very fortunate not to be responsible for much of the planning. We need to be standing up and saying, no, this is a wildlife issue. And Sally and the team have been absolutely fabulous, working in conjunction with Ashfield Council, with helping us stop such a planning application within Ashfield District, where actually we owe great credit to the dingy skipper butterfly for stopping a number of houses going up in Kirkby and Ashfield, and I think it's down to the work that teams like this do to highlight it. And frankly, they've been under resourced for years, and it's great to see a bit of resource coming our way. So you can count wholeheartedly on my support for this, and I'm sure other members feel the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. The background noise was distorting some of the conversation or comments you were making, but we'll keep moving on. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, really, we've heard about Ashfield's dingy skipper butterfly. I would like to reassure committee and colleagues that we have the dingy skipper butterfly in Copgrave Country Park. We've had it for a long time, and that's partly as a result from many years' work by this authority in investing in our country parks and environment around the county. So it's nothing new. This report confirms what the authority has been doing for years, and I'm very pleased to see that we are still committed to it. So I'd like to assure Councillor Hollis that the dingy skipper does cross the boundaries and is doing very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Butler, for letting us know how well it's doing. Okay, I don't see any other speakers. I think we know the recommendation, so we go to the vote then. Can I ask if there are any votes against? Any abstentions? Thank you, it's passed unanimously. Item 9, Gedling Access Road. Can I ask Mike Barnett if you'd like to present the paper, please? Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll not go through detail in the report as it's also under different sections, but I would like to point out a few things, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
Construction progress has been on site for since January last year, and based on progress. For those of you who have been in and around the area, you'll notice that the completion and opening of the Burton Road junction is now complete. That was closed in May 2020, not as 2021 as in the report. There's a typo there, but it was open to traffic in December 2020. That was within the original programme. We'd also completed a key piece of work at the Wall Garden, which was part of the Grade 2 list of building consent due to the adjacent Gedling house. And again, for those of you who may have been around the local area, you'll have noticed the large embankment has now been formed on the section what's running between the Country Park and Arnold Lane. And there's basically the earth, what's moved from there has been on the opposite side of Lamley Lane, which is now currently closed 24/7. I think it's still fair to say that, you know, whilst we've done the good progress with the highway interface works at Burton Road, there's still going to be disruption, albeit we look at the programme to try and minimise that. And there's still significant interface works required, in particular on Mapperley Plains and in and around the Arnold Lane junction once SCAR is open. Throughout the works, we've maintained the pedestrian access from both the Lamley Lane recreation ground and also the public footpath, which I think has been really advantageous, since there's a lot more people using the facilities over the last year, as you know, as part of the pandemic that's been in place. The report seeks approval to continue the enforcement of the bus camera on Stoke Lane. Members may recall this came to committee a year ago. It was put in as part of the closure on Burton Road, but it's recommended that this continues while the GAR works are under construction in case of any future localised closures, and that further consideration is then given once GAR is open to traffic as part of our requirement to review and monitor traffic patterns in the local area in the future. On the timeline, the latest estimated completion date or opening of the Gedling Access Road is the end of September 2021. And members may recall that once the GAR is open, that we'd use that as a diversion route, because we then need to close a section of the Arnold Lane in order to do the tie-ins for the roundabouts. There's been an additional time added of about 10 weeks as a result of the challenges we've faced over the last year. Construction works have continued throughout, and throughout that process we've followed the latest site operating procedures issued by the Construction Leadership Council throughout, and the site team have done a great job in maintaining both the progress on site and obviously keeping the staff and members of the public and who we interface is safe as well. The finance and procurement is detailed in table 1, and we've talked about in here some potential additional costs on the project, and also I'll talk about some of the value engineering options we've looked at in order to try and minimise the impact on that scheme. Just to sort of reiterate, as part of the scheme, we did have an extensive social value and employment skills plan. It's been a challenge given the pandemic and the ability to do some of the social distancing and the events planned, but I think it's worth pointing out the real key achievements that the scheme has achieved in paragraph 38 as part of the scheme, and we'll continue to work hard to continue to get benefits throughout. The recommendations are listed in the report, and I'd happily take any questions. Thank you.
I assume the chair is muted.
I was just testing you. They're taking us red then. I won't read them all out. Thank you very much, Glenn. And sorry, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm proposing those recommendations. It's been one of them mornings.
I'll second those. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, before I go to the members of the committee, I'm going to upset Mark Walker by moving item 10 to 11 and item 11 to 10 after this paper. So are there any questions or comments for Mike from members of the committee on the Gedling Access Road? Councillor Creamer.
More of a thank you as well for actually getting it done. I know it's been rough times with COVID and the weather hasn't been that helpful around there. I know that it suffers from flooding on Arnold Lane every now and then and water has to be rerouted. But on the bus plug at the far end, just like some confirmation, I've got no problem with the paper as it stands. But when it comes to reviewing the bus block, I would just like it in writing someplace, there'd be a full open consultation about it and not just an officer's decision. So yeah, thanks for all the work they've done. They've acted within their remit, certainly, and I've had no complaints about lorry drivers or anything like that. It's been, well, I tell a lie, one, but it was nothing to do with them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. I think that, do you want to come back at all, Mike, or are we happy to move forward?
On the bus plug one, comments are noted. I'd have to pick that up with county council colleagues to the exact process that we take it forward in the future. But rest assured, the recommendations that it stays in until the further review is done.
Thank you very much. I see no more speakers, so we'll move to the vote then. Anybody against the vote, the recommendations? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. So I'm going to move to item 11, which is response to petitions presented to the chairman of the council. And I'd ask Gary Wood to a brief presentation to the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, this report recommends the committee the responses to the issues raised in the petitions 17th of December 2020 full council, and the individual responses are set out in paragraphs A to G. I'll hand back to you, Councillor Cottee.
Thank you very much. I'm going to break the protocol of members first. I'm aware that Councillor Payne would like to say a few words on his petition and has to leave for another meeting in about 3 or 4 minutes. So if committee allows me to, I'll ask Councillor Payne to speak now, please.
You're very kind, Councillor Cottee, and thank you to the committee for their forbearance. Just very, very briefly, thank you to Mike Barnett. And I was listening to your previous item, Chairman. I think the Gedling Access Road is a superb piece of partnership work. And Mike Barnett's done an absolutely outstanding job, I think, of managing the competing issues and tricky issues associated with the project. So just thank you to him and your committee, Chairman, for your work on that. Specifically, Chairman, just very briefly to speak on, as you said, petition F and the response. And I just wanted to put on record, following the incident there was with the child being hit, a very young child, in October last year, 2020, I spoke to you, I think, Chairman, the following day on the phone, and you took my call and acted very, very swiftly, and were very, very supportive as the chairman of this committee about trying to get something done to improve safety measures outside Richard Bonington Primary School, obviously at the request of the 800 odd parents, pupils and teachers and residents in that area. The area is well served by a speed camera, permanent speed camera to the south of the crossing at the school. There is a zebra crossing there at the moment, but there have been incidences with cars running straight over the zebra crossing, and in this occasion, unfortunately, a very young child was hit and very traumatised, as was the child's parent and indeed people who attend the school and the teachers. I just want to say, Chairman, thank you to you. Thank you specifically to Gary Wood. Thank you to the team. You heard the point that I was making. You've worked collaboratively with not only me, but the local residents. And the response that we see here, Chairman, from the petitioner, I think is a big improvement. The installation of the new LED beacons that is being suggested, the ramp at the zebra crossing, the upgrade to the 5 street lights around the crossing, and also the installation of an additional crossing warning sign, I think are a sensible improvement that hopefully will bring some mitigation and some, relieving some concerns, I think, really, for the parents, for the pupils and for the teachers and for the residents around about. I am aware, Chairman, as it says here in your report before the committee today, that there will be a consultation. I would urge all residents, not who signed the petition, but residents in the area, to respond to that consultation. And just once again say thank you, and particular thanks to you, John, because you took several calls from me and you took a really sensible approach to this, and I really appreciated it. So that's the reason I wanted to speak today, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing me in first.
Thank you, Mike. Much appreciated. And I'm sure the officers do, so thank you very much. Okay, any members of the committee wish to speak on any of the petitions? Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just speaking really on petition C, request for speed cameras on Nabs Lane, Hucknall. This is something we feel very passionate about, working with the local councillor, David Shaw, who's been bringing this issue to my attention and taken a number of us from the district council up to this location. It's quite clear that the request for speed cameras from the residents here was fully in order, and I'm slightly disappointed with regards to the responses we've received as part of the response. And I think to give committee members a little bit of a update on the site. I mean, you've got a number of roads coming off Nabs Lane, you know, Seymour Road, Salterford Road, there's a care home, there's a park, there's a number of shops, including a mini supermarket, Sainsbury's, and at that end of the road, there's a particular pinch point where you've got traffic movements, elderly people, school children, a £200,000 play park, which Ashfield District Council has just installed on Nabs Lane. And by the way, extremely disappointed in the County Council not for accepting the LAS scheme, which was submitted by the chairman of this County Council. And I do thank him for working in partnership with Ashfield Council on submitting that bid. But it shouldn't have fallen to Ashfield District Council to roll out what should have been a collaborative project at the play park. But moving back to it, the play park has ultimately created more footfall there of children, of parents crossing the road, etc. And simply putting it, we do need some action. We need more than what's there now. A speed camera, in my eyes, was a perfectly legitimate request from the residents, and frankly, I'm disappointed that we've not taken more action. What I would call, and while we've got the ears of the officers, is for them to investigate looking at other alternatives. If a speed camera isn't their palette, what is? They can count on the support of not only myself, but Councillor David Shaw, the council for the area, and also Ashfield District Council. So we're more than happy to work as much in partnership as we can. And really, we just want to see action on behalf of the residents that do contact us in some serious numbers on there. And damn right, they've had some real good improvements, and now they want to make sure they're safe for using them. And that's everything from the care home to the play park to the school and the shops, Mr. Chairman. But thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rostance.
Thank you, Chairman. You can tell it's getting close to election time, can't you?
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, this was my petition that I put forward with one of the residents. Speed cameras, they've said, is not going to work here, but we have got the speed bumps and everything there already. However, we do acknowledge that there are still problems here. I've been working with highways. I've also been working with the school to look at a different access, a different exit point for where the school children come out. So we're looking at a lot of different options for this area. They didn't think that speed cameras would help in this particular part of the town, but we are looking at different alternatives to try and make this bit of road safer. So we are on the case. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Lawton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's quite difficult to listen to people when there's traffic noise in the background, isn't it? Yeah. The member for Southall asked me to really mention, with reference to the Upton Road Southall petition, is really making a plea to the officers listening, Gary. Roger would like to possibly look into whilst they can't reduce the speed limit, look into a speed interactive sign to try and slow the traffic down in this particular location. There's been quite a number, 15 accidents in this area. And it was quite interesting to listen to Councillor Payne, really. I was one of the instigators of getting the level crossing outside Bonington School. It was the parents petitioned me when I was standing in that area. So it's good to see the update outside the school. It is a dangerous area, and actually, I agree with Michael. It needs something. It needed sorting. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Is there any other committee members wishing to say anything? No. Thank you for your patience, Councillor Plant. If you would like to make your comments, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Cottian, and thank you for allowing me to attend the meeting. And it's been very interesting, I have to say, so far. My petition, which had 326 signatures, is a request for a pedestrian crossing on Musters Road near the junction with George Road in West Bridgford. This is the bottom end of Musters Road, nearer to the cricket ground. Many parents have to cross Musters Road and then walk down George Road to access West Bridgford Infant School. My petition has the full support of the West Bridgford Infant School and the governing body. St George's Medical Centre and Pharmacy are on Musters Road and the corner of George Road. Cars are allowed to park on this side of the road. There are double yellow lines at the junction of Musters Road and George Road, but vans and cars invariably park right up to the double yellows and often not on them because they're nipping in and out of the pharmacy and obviously think they can do it very quickly. And this greatly reduces the visibility for road users to cross Musters Road safely. The report states that these parking bays, when occupied, could restrict visibility. I can assure the committee that these parking bays are always occupied. This is an exceptionally busy junction with the medical centre, the health centre and the pharmacy all next to one another, and there's no parking on the other side of Musters Road, which means parking spaces are always at a premium. The report states that a formal crossing at this location has been requested before and that traffic surveys have been undertaken previously. I would like to know how long ago the last survey was done, because I know I brought this issue up many years ago before I was on the County Council. I know a pedestrian crossing has recently been installed at the top end of Musters Road, and I can't imagine that the traffic flow there is more than the traffic flow at the Trent Bridge end of Musters Road, with many vehicles heading to the city over Trent Bridge. The report recognises the issues of the width of Musters Road and restricted visibility and suggests it might be possible to construct a footway built out in the vicinity to overcome the issues of the poor visibility, but only if costs permit. I really don't think this is good enough. The report has not been based on a recent up-to-date traffic survey, and I appreciate the reasons why that hasn't taken place. However, as a local authority, we want to encourage our children and our parents to walk to school, leave their cars at home, and in the interest of their health and well-being, and in the interest of the planet. Parents will only do this if they can be assured that it's safe for their child and themselves to walk to school. Otherwise, they'll just get back into their cars. I would like to ask the committee to reconsider this issue and for officers to complete an up-to-date traffic survey post-COVID, so that the decision can be made on relevant up-to-date data, and only then can a fair and informed decision be made on this issue. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. It does say in it, and I can only go by what information I'm provided with. At number 42, the last sentence is a study will therefore be undertaken to determine the feasibility and cost of another option to see what we can do. It hasn't gone away, and I will ask for the information that you've asked for to be passed on to you so that you're aware of it. Thank you. Thank you. So I can't see that anybody else wishes to speak, so I need to move a recommendation, which has two recommendations. The proposed actions be approved and the lead petitioners be informed accordingly, and the outcome of committee's consideration be reported to full council. I propose that recommendation.
Yeah, I'll second that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right. There any objection? Go to the vote. Anything? Anybody against? I'll get it right at the end of the day. No. Any abstentions? Therefore, that's unanimous. So. Thank you, and I'll move back to item 10. I do apologise, Mark, for moving it around. I hope you'll still speak to me. And could you present the paper for the update of key trading standards and community matters, please? Thank you.
Yep, great. Thank you, Chair, for that. Yes, I'd just like to talk about a few items, primarily around the decisions that we are being sought today. So if I could take your attention to paragraph 16, which is in page 85 of the pack. It talks about the contain Programme Manager and Support Officer posts. Enforcement of COVID legislation is a key priority to control the spread. Public Health are very keen to have a joined up approach across the county and city. The four roles set out in the report have been developed to do that, and they've been costed out within a £200,000 budget. So far, we've appointed a Programme Manager and one Support Officer, and that's been on an agency arrangement. The Programme Manager has had an immediate effect, put together a county-wide enforcement programme with the Health and Safety Executive looking at face coverings in supermarkets. Currently, also, they're developing the partnership plan on how to respond to Operation Eagle, which is the name given to work if a COVID variant should arrive in Nottinghamshire, such as the South African one. So the report today seeks approval of committee to keep those roles in place for as long as needed within the contained budget provided by public health colleagues. If I can then move on to paragraph 23, just talk briefly, we're seeking our annual approval here for the pricing structure to be used in the Trading Standards Service for 21-22. And basically the report seeks to continue to use the commercial model of setting prices for the services, the range of services that we've provided in this across the service, and that we've used it for a number of years successfully now, up of course until the pandemic hit. The report also indicates there's a shortfall on trading standards income this year of around about 167,000, and just to add that officers are going to review the strategy for generating income in the coming months, given the impact of the pandemic. If I can take your attention to paragraph 36, we'll talk about the food and feed service plan. Attached to the report is the proposed food and feed enforcement plan for next year. It's a statutory duty to produce such a plan. And obviously food work is an important duty on the service. The Food Safety Act is has split enforcement between district councils and environmental health and their environmental health services, and of course county council trading standards service. The plan sets out how efforts are coordinated between those two regulators. A good example in there, it talks about the work to prevent allergen-related deaths. The plan is attached for your approval as Appendix 1, as I've said. And lastly, just to add that following the request, the last committee regarding a breakdown of talented athletes awards, the district breakdown by sport requested has now been shared with the support officers for the political groups. So there you are. Thank you, Chair. We'll pass back to you at this point.
Thank you very much. The recommendations are on page 93, and there's 4 recommendations there, which I'm sure that you've all studied. So I'll propose those recommendations. Thank you.
I'll second those, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Handley. Okay. Anybody wish to speak with a question or comment? Councillor Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the proposed charges, I know we decided last time about the fact that there should be flexible, etc., but we did used to have a list come, and we've not got that list of charges. And I don't like agreeing to see without seeing. I know we have done before. We've seen the list, so that we actually know exactly how much those charges are going up. Because whereas the list is not contained here, and I don't like that. I like to see, like we have in the previous one, where we can see the list, and we can actually, if we don't think that charge is right, or for whatever reason, we can actually challenge that. So I would be grateful if we could have a copy of the list of charges. Just on the report in general, I don't disagree with what we're saying about the contain programme. I think that's very important that we do have that, and that we keep it for as long as the finances allow. Just to note, at page 88 of 136, item 42, the POCA, good piece of legislation that was, whether you like the government of the time or not, Tony Blair government introduced POCA. I think it was one of the best acts that we've ever introduced to attack criminals and get back the proceeds of their dirty deeds. And I think this just shows, you know, the significant sums there that have come in from this, and we ought to. I know the amount of work that goes in by our financial investigators to actually collate all this, and sometimes that means tracking things abroad, and the work. But the work that they've done here, the East Midlands investigation team, is fantastic, and more power to the elbow. Just a general comment. I mean, I did raise the issue, and it is within the papers. About the LAS bids and the amount of work that the voluntary sector are doing currently, and the grants that have been awarded to them during this particular time. And as you know, I voiced my concern about the fact that we have not got a paper here today to extend the grants that we gave out 3 years ago to voluntary organisations, and usually that is for infrastructure. It's not just for one-off. The 3-year grants are about their infrastructure, and I know, John, that you supported that, and I know both Johns did, and I presume it was taken out by someone else out of your hands. My fear is that it takes years to build an infrastructure for the voluntary sector, years, and we have got some of the best voluntary sector organisations working within Nottinghamshire, and as I said, they've stepped up to the plate during the COVID crisis, and they're doing a lot of work, and including the fact that they've took on additional work and applied for additional grants to do work above and beyond, and my fear is that by not giving them that leeway so that they can guarantee that their infrastructure grant continues, is that by just overnight that grant could lead them to collapsing. And once you have a voluntary sector that collapses, it's very, very difficult to build it back up again. So I would hope that some very serious thought goes into doing something around that grant. And I think we ought to take this opportunity to really thank the voluntary sector, as I say, for what they've done in stepping up to the mettle. And I know where I live, the numerous ones that have, the thousands and thousands of parcels, and whether that not just be food parcels, but whether that's parcels for youngsters at home, who are finding it difficult, whether it's been games and various other things, down to even, stuff like soap and deodorant and various other stuff that they've sort of given through to families. And I think we should congratulate the fact, and that's only being able to be delivered because the infrastructure that we've built up over years is there. By not giving them that clarity which they need for the next few weeks, few months, I think it makes them difficult, because clearly if they can't get that clarity, they've got people that they employ, and they only employ them on short-term contracts, and so most of them will be coming to an end. So I was saddened to see the approach, but as I say, just want to congratulate the voluntary sector for what they do. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Glenn. Councillor Handley.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks, Lynn, for your comments. And I've got to say, there's not very much there that I can disagree with. A few years ago, when I had the privilege of being chairman, I was able to say that Nottinghamshire ran very much on the voluntary sector. If it wasn't for the volunteers, things would fall apart. And I understand what you're saying, but it was decided that rather than to put something in that would create a problem for whatever new administration was coming in, it was decided not to do that. But it is intended to put it on as an item on the work programme for June, so that we can actually get to put some kind of structure in for these people as quickly as possible.
I think it will be taken up by officers straight away as the first thing for the next administration. So yeah, did you want to come back, Glyn?
Chairman, yeah, and John's just mentioned an issue that I've forgotten, and it's about the work programme, Chairman. And I know it's coming up, and I could have probably brought it there. But what I would like to see is a mapping exercise take place. And I know people have got a lot of work on, but I think it's very important at this time that we actually do a mapping exercise on the voluntary sector that we've got currently. There will be a lot of small voluntary bodies that have folded because they didn't fit the criteria of within the COVID section or whatever. And I think it would bode well if we could actually do a mapping exercise on the voluntary sector of what's existing, but also what's needed to support them and continue, including not just during this period, but after, and put that as an item on the agenda. Because I think we'll be surprised at the number of volunteer groups that we were working with that are not there anymore. But also there'll be some that are still, very strong and moving on. And I think we ought to have that data because that's really important for when we move forward.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. Mark, would you like to come back on the comments made, please?
Yep, sure. Yeah, so just going back to the question Councillor Guilfoyle raised about charges. Yeah, you obviously correct, as in we used to have a price list. It was based on it was a cost-based model of this is what we will charge. What that didn't do, though, that was fairly, the issue with that was it was rigid, it wasn't market based. So we wanted to compete with people in the commercial sector, in a sense, in that sort of field. And so therefore we were taking the new model that was set out within the report is looking at both sides of the equation, the costs involved, but also what the market could sustain, and also whether there's any other benefits to undertaking pieces of work. So that was the sort of the basis of the flexible model. What I can do is take away and come back with a sort of an idea of the types of prices that we're charging, have a think about the issue, and then bring something back to committee on that going forward. With regards to proceeds of crime, yes, the substantive convictions took place, I think, back in 2019. So it does take a lot of effort, a lot of work, and the financial investigators that we have within the service do excellent work to hunt down the money. And again, we actually sell some of their services to other enforcers as well. So that's a really good thing. Just moving on to the community and voluntary sector and all the points that have been made around that. I mean, absolutely fundamental. As you will know, I chair the Community Support Hub cell for the Local Resilience Forum. Work with the community and voluntary sector through the pandemic has been absolutely fundamental, has been crucial. The Local Resilience Forum, the Humanitarian Assistance Group, commissioned a piece of report looking at the resilience of the community and voluntary sector. That work is currently underway, and we can bring some of that work obviously to committee to share with members to show what we've been doing. We've been working with them, with the sector, and they've just developed a new compact, for example, a new arrangement that we're currently sort of discussing. And so there is a lot of work going on to try and the relationship we are trying to work in a different way with the sector, and it's certainly part of the transformation programs of the county council going forward, looking at how we reset the relationship with the community and voluntary sector. So accept everything that's been said here, and yeah, we're trying to think hard about understanding what the challenges are and how we work in a different way with the community and voluntary sector to support them going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think there's anybody else wishing to speak, so we'll move to the vote then, please. Are there any abstentions to the recommendations? Any votes against? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous then. Move on to the next item, item 12. Nottinghamshire County Council, A6006 Melton Road, Eastleek, Rempston, Stamford-on-Soar, 40-mile-an-hour speed limit order. I think it's Mike. Is it Mike speaking on this one? Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. So this report is to grant delegated approval for the corporate director to conjunction with the chair to consider objections received to the order. All the details and the purpose of the description are included in the report. At the moment, the consultation has ended and we're doing an analysis of the responses, but it's looking like no objections. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Can't see anybody. We'll move to the report, the vote then, please. Are there anybody against the recommendation? No. Any abstentions? That's unanimous then. Thank you very much.
I'll second that if needed, Chairman.
Oh, aye. Yes, thank you. Very good of you there, Councillor Roston. It's just keeping me on my toes. It's been one of those days, hasn't it? So we're granting delegated approval to Corporate Director Place to consider objections received if required in consultation with the committee chair in respect of the TRO that we've just talked about. Thank you. I propose that. And it's been seconded. So thank you. And nobody objected or abstained, so that's approved. Thank you. The next item, item 13, Main Road, Jacksdale, Zebra Crossing. I think Doug Coots is going to present that. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members and councillors. Purpose of the report is to consider the next steps on implementation of a proposed new zebra crossing on Main Road, Jacksdale, and whether the existing highway layout is left unchanged. And secondly, to consider the request for a review of the school zone outside Jacksdale Primary School. The report contains details of the proposals that were developed and the consultations that have been undertaken. The consultations show that there are varying views on the zebra crossing arrangement, and it is proposed currently that the zebra crossing is not implemented and that the highway layout is left unchanged. However, a review will be undertaken of the school zone outside Jacksdale Primary School as requested, with further measures considered for a future highways programme. The recommendations are set out on page 126 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The recommendation is the proposed zebra crossing on Main Road, Jacksdale is not implemented and the existing highway layout be left unchanged. And number 2, the review of the school zone outside Jacksdale Primary School, a review be undertaken. I propose that.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I think I've got to be careful because my screen has all moved. But any members of the committee wish to speak? Councillor Guilfoyle.
Yes, Chairman. It's not a comment about the scheme in general, because I believe obviously we've got the local member, and I'm a firm believer that local members know their area best and what is done for it. Mine's about the principle of zebra crossings, and that's even my colleague earlier on. I'm not in favour after having zebra crossings done in a lot of areas, because you find that after a period of time people are asking you to get them changed to either a pelican or a toucan, and the reason being behind that is because unfortunately drivers today don't take any notice of zebra crossings, and I don't know whether that's something that when they drive, they're doing the highway code, they miss it out, because most of the crossings that you come across these days are either toucan or pelican. And I was just wondering whether we reviewed, have a look at reviewing the issue of whether we install zebras and where we do it, because as I say, you're not muted, John.
Sorry, thank you. The screen's moved. I can't see much on the screen.
No, you're all right. You're not muted. You're not muted. Okay. So for me, I have a particular concern about that, because as I say, I've found that people do not take any notice of zebra crossings, and they become a danger, not an asset like they used to be. So just an observation, and also whether that is something that we ought to consider. And I know there's a difference in price and cost, but actually there's a significant difference in safety as well to people that are crossing it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other member of the committee? No, I'm presuming, Councillor Martin, you would like to speak to the paper?
Yes, please, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to address your committee on such an important issue for the residents of Jacksdale and Westwood in my division. For over 5 years, I've been fighting hard for a crossing on Main Road in Jacksdale to make it safer for local children to get to and from school, and also to help people use the fantastic local shops that our village has. As you know well, Mr. Chairman, I've raised this issue many times at council meetings, making it clear how important this matter is for my residents. So let me be clear, I'm delighted that Nottinghamshire County Council have agreed with me that a crossing was needed in this area, and I want to thank you for agreeing to my requests for it. As you know, Mr. Chairman, today we are here again discussing the exact location. It's vital that the crossing is installed where it can be of maximum benefit to local residents, but also where it will cause the least harm to our fantastic independent shopkeepers and businesses. As you know, when the council first accepted my request for the new crossing 2 years ago, I pushed hard for it to be located outside the school. However, you, Mr. Chairman, and I, and this committee were all informed that highways officers from this council deemed the location unsafe and was against the policy of Nottinghamshire County Council because of the slight curvature of the road, causing visibility issues and not meeting minimum highway distances. Following this, highways officers redrew the plans, relocating the crossing further along Main Road. This location is not accepted by the local businesses who feel this will harm the ability of passing trade to pull over and shop. After such a difficult year for businesses, we should be concerned about their worries and take them into serious consideration. That is why, Mr. Chairman, I'm absolutely delighted that the County Council highways officers have agreed with my suggestion to review the location again to find the best possible site. My word of caution is this: I sincerely hope that this is a genuine review and not a cynical attempt to hoodwink local residents for political reasons that after May's council elections simply restate the same "this cannot go here" policy. So I support a genuine review. I support a crossing for the school, outside the school. Please, Mr. Chairman, give me the reassurance that this will be seriously, carefully and genuinely reviewed so that my residents get the proper road crossing they deserve. The residents of Jacksdale and Westwood are very intelligent and they will see straight through any contracts. So please take this opportunity to assure me that this isn't just another election statement that dies once the polls are closed. Thank you for allowing me to address the committee.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak on this before I respond to Councillor Martin?
Yes, Chairman.
Councillor Hollis. There's a lot of noise, Councillor Hollis.
Well, I hope you can hear me okay. There's no noise my end.
There is, but go on, you can speak, I can hear you.
I hope you can hear me okay. So you can hear me okay now?
Yeah,
Thank
still
you.
got background noise, but carry on.
Not sure what that is, but no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And really, it's just to reaffirm what Councillor Martin said. And I don't want to embarrass Councillor Martin, but he's obviously very passionate about Jacksdale, Underwood, and Selston, but particularly about this issue. And I've been lucky enough to be on this committee since it was formed. But even the year prior to that, for the last 5 years, Councillor Martin has been pushing for action in this part of Jacksdale, particularly with the need for a zebra crossing. And members of the committee, particularly who are familiar with that part of Jacksdale, will know that there's quite successful shops on both sides of the road, a garden centre, number of shops, like I say, on both sides, but also a large car park which Ashfield Council has just invested in, and also a multi-use games area. So it's quite a heavily used part of the division, but also a large main road as on top. So you've kind of got speeding traffic and the build-up of traffic, and also a multiple use from elderly people, children on both sides of the road. So that's why we need a zebra crossing. And we thank the County Council, frankly, for the work they've done thus far. My concern being to the changes that are now being mooted are that, of course, the County Council are now looking at the spot that we were looking at nearly 18 months ago, and that was thrown out because of technical reasons. It was too close to a corner, etc., etc. And I'd like to understand, really, for a matter of clarity, why that area is now being revisited. Have I missed something? Have the rules changed? Are we now willing to overlook certain safety precautions? Because we want this zebra crossing in, we want it as soon as possible. Councillor Dave Martin frankly needs to stop chewing my ear off, so we need to get something installed. But I really hope, as Councillor Martin said, that this isn't a political stunt that suddenly will be dropped after the May's elections. If the site that is now being revisited after paperwork supplied by this home county council discounted the original site is now being looked at again. So I'll be voting in favour of this on the direction and advice from Councillor Martin. I thank him for that. Don't thank him for chewing me ear off about every issue in Jacksdale, Selston and Underwood. There is other parts of the county, Councillor Martin, I would say. But we do need to get onto this, and I welcome the review thus far, but I really hope and I trust that it's a genuine review and not political gamesmanship, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hollis. Councillor Lawton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can we move on to the vote on this one? On two separate occasions, you've been accused of making decisions on political basis on this particular pedestrian crossing, and in one case, somebody has insinuated you're a con man. So as a result, I think this is going beyond the pale, Mr. Chairman. Can we move to the vote?
We're going to, Bruce. Thank you for that. I've never done anything to con anybody in any way. There has been a lot of debate and non-debate over this crossing, and Councillor Martin's smiling. I know that he was going to do a survey, which wasn't done. He asked the county council if he would be able to do it. I've actually been and walked along the road. I've stood at the corner. I'm not a technical man. I take advice from the team. I don't want to make a decision which is wrong when you have a petition against it for about 180 people. So I'm not going to make a decision to put this crossing in until it's decided correctly and properly through the proper channels. I've had a letter from the school regarding it, which conflicts with some of the other information I've got. So this is a genuine reason to push this forward. And I'm sorry it's run out of time. I would like to have dealt with it a long time ago. But there have been things that have stopped it going forward.
Yeah, but your own policy from the 24th of April.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Martin, I've given you the opportunity to speak. Yeah, I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you, so I'd appreciate you not interrupting me, please. So I've gone through the process where at the end of the day, I'm not going to make a decision on information that is not clear to me. So it's going to go through the process genuinely in the recommendations given. So I'm now going to move it to the vote. So anybody voting against it? Any abstentions? Thank you. So that's agreed unanimously. So we now move on to the work programme, and I'll point it over at Adrian. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, I'm conscious that we've highlighted earlier on in the conversation today, or the meeting today, that there would be an additional item to add to the June work programme around the local improvement scheme, which we'll certainly add, and we will gladly take any further additions to the work programme.
Thank you. And I know there is a date in April. I don't think there's going to be a lot of things come to it. It may not happen, but it is there for a reason in case anything crops up as an emergency, I think. Sorry, Councillor Guilfoyle, sorry.
Yeah, I accept what Adrian said about the LAS scheme, but the other bit was about the mapping and perhaps an update on the state of the voluntary sector.
I think yeah, I think Mark said that he was going to do that. So I'm just asking it to be included on the work programme. That was all, John. Okay, thank you.
And I know what you're trying to say is the difficulty with the noise, background noise. I mean, I don't know where Tom is, but he's been out quite. It sounds like he's outside, and I'd just like to remind him that there is a lockdown on. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Derek Higton. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just to pick up on Councillor Guilfoyle's point. I suspect, I think as part of the work that we do on the local improvement scheme and bring that as we bring that forward to June's committee, we can incorporate within that an assessment of the state of the voluntary sector, because obviously that will be critical in determining future decisions around the scope and the purpose of the local improvement scheme.
Thank you, Derek. Okay. Have you got a hand up, Councillor Hollis, or is that a historic one?
No, I've got my hand up, Mr. Chairman. And just to add to the work programme, I'd very much like a fund adding or a discussion. Obviously, the government's just given Nottinghamshire County Council £8 million towards.
Mr. Chairman, I can't hear him.
Can't hear you.
Background noise. The traffic
Somebody
too
keeps
noisy.
muting me, Mr. Chairman. I've not.
Well, it's not.
I don't know.
It's not me, Tom.
Wants to get in front of the computer, not in the car.
Nobody's muted him. It's just the wind in the background.
Just to carry on, Mr. Chairman, I would like in the April meeting, adding on to the work programme, a discussion and review about how the £8 million towards pothole repairs is going to be allocated. Obviously, repair review, bit of detail, is certainly a discussion of what's going to happen to that money across Nottinghamshire. I think all members will agree that the state of the roads is a real issue at the moment, without saying any more to make it a debate. But if we have got this money coming, it seems like a timely manner to put that as a discussion in the next meeting, Mr. Chairman, so all members can partake in and highlight exactly how it's going to be spent. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Yeah, sorry, I just had to come off mute. Thank you, Councillor Hollis. I'm very conscious that when we had a report to committee previously, we did give an indication of the amount that we were expecting to receive from the government. I think what we've now seen is that confirmed, so it has been through committee already. I will obviously reflect on that with colleagues in the team just to make sure we are talking about the same money. Forgive us, it has been a little difficult to hear you with some of the background noise, but I think we caught. I think you're referring to the DFT monies that have now been confirmed, but were in a previous report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes the meeting. So I think. Oh, right. So yeah, I'm happy with the work programme. I just need somebody to second that. Phil, are you? Sorry.
I'll second that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So that's okay. We've done that. Over the 4 years, I'd like to thank most of you. No, tongue in cheek. Thank you very much for your behaviour within the committee. At most times, it's been excellent. We've had good debates, and I've enjoyed doing the job most of the time. I'm sorry about the delayed start this morning. I'm going to blame it on the IT department. So thank you very much indeed, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Chairman.
Well done.